right, Psalm 29, let's call this one Praying with Bass. Hopefully why will become clear by the time we get to the end of the discussion, but let's look at this week's lessons through the lens of pray, not P-R-A-Y, as much as we will look at it through the lens of P-R-A, because it seems that in this set of 7 chapters, they really take the shape of prayers, something we've mentioned before that seemed to clear up for me even more this week, as David is going to seem to start out in most of these, 5 of the 7 at least, making some form of praise or gratitude towards God for the things that he has done before he goes on to recall either a portion of his personal history or a tendency of God that will then help him focus on either what he is asking of God, thus the PRA, or what he is counseling the people of God they would be wise to ask of God or request from him. But in this chapter, he's going to start off by talking about ascribe to the Lord in 3, maybe 2 different ways. 1, strength, and then 2, the glory or the honor that is due his name. And without indulging the temptation to preach just that first portion, it's important to understand that strength thing is going to come up throughout the chapter. But the glory due really goes to just understanding that oftentimes when I preach, I will quote or cite different people who I'm drawing from. And I think that's important because in different areas of life, people understand that if you create work product, we've talked in previous chapters about, you want credit for the thing that you originated, especially if you hear someone else parroting your ideas. And so he is starting out here with saying the kind of gratitude that God is due gives him credit for the things that he has done, not simply taking his ideas and passing them off as our own. Likewise, with our brothers and sisters, to the degree that we know, because there are times we might forget where we got something from, but to the degree you know you got a thought or a thing from someone else, part of showing genuine gratitude is giving thanks or credit to the source for your concepts, ideas, or your work. And so here, David begins by giving praise or credit to God. It's going to say in the form of worship for his strength, as David then goes into recalling all of the strength that God has displayed through his voice alone, as David is going to describe God's voice as hovering over the waters, it thundering, thus our title this week, bass. Why? Because that term bass is what we sometimes use in the communities I grew up in as that quality of a voice that thunders. The distinction that David is going to draw, however, is it's not simply the bass in his voice that commands attention. It's the things that his voice is able to get done that really merit our respect. As he goes on to say, it is powerful, it's majestic, it breaks cedars, a type of wood that I looked up, and when I looked it up, it's known for its strength and resilience, in addition to many other qualities it carries. It makes it durable building material. But he's saying God's voice alone breaks the cedars. It makes nations, entire nations, to skip like livestock. It flashes forth fire. It shakes the wilderness, makes the deer give birth, and strips the forest bare. As David goes on to conclude, understanding all of the strength associated with God's voice alone, his people would be wise to pray to him for strength and, more importantly, peace, bringing to mind 2 things for me. And that is, to the degree we have brought out that whole distinction between personality, meaning the face that I put out, and character, what I really am inside, the voice that God projects is a genuine reflection of his power. Teddy Roosevelt, former president of the United States, was known for saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. However, this proverb is letting us know that when God's voice thunders, it is the stick, because that is the distance between his personality and his character. There's no distance whatsoever. What you see with God is what you get. And so when he speaks, that is the power to create. We now have the ability to appreciate all the things that Siri and Alexa can do, as I've mentioned before. Can you imagine what David is ascribing to God's Alexa or Siri? Understanding that the other thing that caught my attention was David's request for God to give his people both strength and peace. Understanding that there is a certain amount of strength that we can use to try to carve out our own peace, but we can often make a greater mess of our situation, understanding all of the enemies and animosity we can generate, even with the best of intentions, trying to carve out a peace, not fully appreciating the effects of our actions on other people. Going back to something we noticed in Psalm 19, where the psalmist asked God to keep him back from presumptuous sins, the kinds of sins that can be potentially committed with the best of intentions, but can create all kinds of damage we never intended or foresaw. David here is asking God to give his people the kind of peace that comes without all of the damage that we can create in our own strength, which is why throughout most of the rest of these chapters, much like what we've seen before, David is going to counsel us in the wisdom of waiting for God to act.